On the quiet edge of Claymore County, mornings usually arrived softly. Pink asters blooming along the fence, purple chrysanthemums standing tall, and tiny daisies dancing in the breeze. But that morning, Margaret Darby froze when she saw her flower bed. Several asters were torn, the daisies were crushed, and the soil had been kicked and scattered, as if something had rampaged through the garden. To anyone else, it might have been a small mess. But to Margaret, those flowers carried years of memories with her mother. Seeing them broken felt like something inside her cracked. She called for her husband. When he walked over from the well, she simply pointed at the damaged flowers, her face caught between anger and heartbreak. With his usual calm, Thomas Darby suspected that the Collin family's chickens had slipped through the fence again. The Collin family had only lived next door for 2 months. Margaret had hoped that the new neighbor would bring new warmth to the quiet road. Instead, their chickens did. They had found a loose plank in the old fence, squeezed through it, and treated Margaret's garden like their personal playground. Margaret paced up and down the fence, frustration rising. This is getting out of hand. I should report this to the village council. Thomas gave her a small smile. You once said the neighborhood was too quiet. Are you sure you want that silence back? Margaret fell quiet, but frustration still sat heavily on her chest. That afternoon, as the sunlight turned warm and golden, Thomas knew what his wife needed. Not confrontation, but kindness. He picked a few stems of asters, chrysanthemums, and daisies, arranging them neatly in a small basket. Then he walked over to the Collin house, knocked softly, and warmly invited them to Sunday supper. Henry Collin looked surprised, but grateful. And from behind his legs, a little girl named Annie peeked out, eyes bright with curiosity. On Sunday evening, the Darby home glowed with soft lamplight. The table was filled with vegetable soup, warm bread, and a roast chicken brought by the Collin family. Laughter flowed easily. Stories bounced from one person to another. No one mentioned the naughty chickens or the ruined flowers. Margaret watched Annie sitting politely, her eyes shining. Do you like flowers? Margaret asked gently. Annie nodded quickly, her smile pure and bright. And for the first time in days, Margaret felt the tightness in her chest begin to ease. After dinner, Margaret stepped into the back room. She returned with small clay pots. Inside them were young asters, baby chrysanthemums, and sprouting daisies. She handed them to Annie with care. Take care of them slowly, all right? Treat them like little friends. Annie held the pots with both hands, as if she were carrying something precious. For the next few days, the Collin home was filled with cheerful sounds, Annie watering her plants, brushing soil off the pots, and placing them carefully where the morning sun was brightest. Then, one morning, a sharp cry shattered the quiet. Henry and his wife rushed outside. The clay pots were knocked over, soil scattered everywhere, the seedlings were damaged. And chicken footprints surrounded the mess. Annie cried hard, her small shoulders shaking. She explained she tried to stop the chickens, but they slipped past her. And in that moment, Henry Collin realized all his mistakes, how he had let the chickens roam freely for far too long. Not long after, Henry brought Annie to the Darby's fence. Annie still sniffled softly, clutching her empty pot. Henry bowed his head.
I'm sorry, Margaret, I should have taken better care. The chickens caused trouble again.
For a moment, Margaret felt that familiar sting of irritation. But the moment she saw Annie's devastated face, everything softened. She knelt down and comforted the little girl, gently saying that even chickens sometimes can't resist nibbling on certain flowers. Then she invited Annie into the garden to choose new seedlings, so she could start caring for her flowers all over again. That afternoon, Henry wasted no time. He cut sturdy wooden planks, hammered them firmly, and built a taller, stronger fence around his chicken yard. Sawdust drifted through the golden sunlight. From their garden, the Darbys watched quietly, appreciating the effort. For the first time in weeks, the flowers swayed gently, undisturbed. In the days that followed, peace finally returned. Asters opened their petals again. Chrysanthemum stood tall in the breeze. The daisies smiled in the morning sun. And the Colin chickens stayed safely behind their new fence. A small tradition soon formed. Margaret sent a fresh bouquet each week. And the Colin family returned the kindness with a basket of fresh eggs. And so, Claymore Road found its calm once more. Because sometimes, small troubles don't need big anger. Just a little patience. A little kindness. And a shared meal around the same table. The flowers kept growing. And so did their friendship.